All right, first off, congratulations to South Carolina State. I thought if you take a look at the second half, that's where they were able to win the game. I thought their zone, they went to zone there, and I thought that affected us. And then, of course, we put them on the foul line continually through the game, which was, it's hard to overcome that. When they went to zone, they were playing zone on makes. And when you're fouling the team every time down the court, it's hard not to have to face anything but the zone. Conversely, I thought we really struggled from the perspective of post play and being able to get some production out of the post. Obviously G and Eric were the two guys that were able to put the ball in the basket for us. We've typically been able to get production from the bench, and that certainly affected us. And then most importantly is we weren't able to get them off the boards in the second half. When they did miss, they were able to not only get offensive rebounds, but they were able to get offensive rebounds, stick backs, and they were able to keep some balls alive. And so as you look at the second half of the game, I want to say they out-rebounded us by 12. I think that's the number. And an inordinate amount of those rebounds came from the offensive end, and certainly put ourselves in a hole. Couldn't keep them out of the zone, couldn't keep them off the board, so that's a hard thing to overcome. And too many turnovers in the second half. I think we had 9 turnovers in the second half. We had 4 in the first, and then as you get in a tight game like that and you're down the stretch, you can't turn the ball over. And some of the turnovers are balls that we have inside. We lose control of the ball. Balls bounce off chests, and some of those. So those make it hard, particularly when you're right there in close range.
G seemed to think that they came out with more energy and played with more physicality in the second half. Does that surprise you, considering this was their 3rd game in 7 days and you guys haven't played since the 22nd?
I don't know if it surprised me. I'll say this. I thought they definitely had better energy and more energy in it, and I think, as you look at that game and you start watching how the game unfolded, they were able to get to the free throw line, so I thought they had some guys that were able to see the ball go into the basket. And then, of course, as you're making free throws, you're cutting into the lead, because I think we're up 11, and with the exception of a three-pointer they hit, I think they erased the lead solely on free throws. And I may have missed a bucket here or there. I'll have to watch the film. But, I think as you start cutting in the leads and you're able to get to the foul line, that certainly creates energy in itself. I think this is a group, when you look at some of the places they've played and they've been, and, they've certainly been in some environments here. I think this is their 13th game or something like that on the road. So I don't think, any environment or whatever is a shock. In some ways, I think when they've been out on the road that long, there is a sense of getting comfortable on the road. Doesn't mean you're going to be able to win, but, certainly settling in and getting into a rhythm. But they were able to do that in the second half. And once they started rebounding, offensive rebounding the ball, that helps you get energy. When you know the ball's going to go up on the rim and you're able to keep it alive. And we could not get them off the boards. We could not get a rebound, and it broke us down numerous times.
How surprised are you that they could come out of this with a 34-12 advantage in points off the bench?
Well, I don't know. Well, let me say this: their leading scorer doesn't start. Okay, so when you look at Eves, he's a guy that's what he does. For whatever reason, they don't start him, and he's come off, so he's always gonna, I think at times, I shouldn't say he's always there. At times, they're going to outscore teams off the bench just because of that, But the 34-12, I mean, that's an inordinate amount, a number. You tell me they outscore you 26-18 or 20, okay. But if you look at Eric Ease has 23 points off the bench. Now, when you get 23 points off of your bench as combined, that's a good night. But when you got a guy that's able to come in and give you 16, 17 or whatever it is, then that's certainly going to change it. But, the 12 off the bench on our end is what hurt us also. We didn't have anyone that was giving us production off the bench, able to score. I thought we had some shots. We had some open opportunities, some threes, and we don't make them. And when you look at our percentage for the game, 4 of 18, it's evident right there as you take a look at it. You know, there were some times when we had some shots that, you know, you got to be able to knock down the shots. They're open looks. You got to be able to knock them down.
Most nights you're going to need more than two people in double figures.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, you talk about most nights, but 24-16 by those two, and then I don't think we had anyone else that had over 7, with the exception of LJ. But, you know, in many ways you're better off, you know, with the 16, 12, and 12, like that, split up that way and getting production from multiple guys. But we weren't able to get it. When they went to the zone, you know, being able to get the ball in the interior and make a pass or make a play becomes paramount, and we couldn't do that. And, you know, there were times when, you know, we got it in there and we couldn't do anything with it. And so that obviously hurts you.
You guys were rolling along there at 6-4, 3 straight losses now to end the non-conference schedule. What's your major concern at this point with the MAC schedule coming up?
Well, I mean, I think my major concern is the next game, you know, is where it's always going to start. But, you know, before you get to that is how do we get better? You know, that's the most important thing. Someone asked me after the Dayton game, you know, was I happy with our effort and so forth. I said I thought we got in a nice rhythm. The problem is now we have 10 days off. You know, so the question becomes is, you know, how do you come back? Do you still have the same rhythm that you were able to get to in Dayton? I thought if you go back, I thought we'd put 3 out of 4 halves together on the road. We had a half against Tennessee Tech, and then pretty much we had 2 halves against Dayton that were good halves. Not great, but that were good halves. And so obviously you're looking for consistency. But, you know, at the end of the day, listen, if we can't get rebounds, you know, and if we can't play without fouling, as you look at it, I mean, I don't think there was anything specific that they ran or anything tricky, but we could not keep them off the foul line. I mean, it was unbelievable, and, you know, and that's how the game's being officiated. So, you know, not a point of, you know, complaining about it or whatever. Well, there's some calls that maybe go this way or that way, yeah, but for the most part, you know, we had some fouls that were, you know, away from the action, which certainly hurts you, and they did a good job of trying to exploit our team by, you know, creating a tough matchup at times by taking it on, trying to, you know, create, you know, fouls and everything else, but we could not keep them off the line. And then when we got to stop, we don't get the rebound. So, you know, you asked me, is there a concern? Well, we got a rebound, number one. We got to be able to do that. I thought, you know, if you look at this game, this is one of the first setbacks really of this nature from the boards that we've had. You know, I thought in the first half we did a solid job. We're up by 2. And then in the second half they come out and they pound us. And, you know, when you start smelling blood, then, you know, you get hungry and you get to going. And I think that's what happened with their team in the second half when they were able to get a couple balls and keep them alive. So we got to rebound, we got to play without fouling, and then we've got to be able to have some presence when we do get the ball inside. That we've got to be able, even if you don't score, you got to be able to get a foul. I mean, we can't have the, you know, kind of game. And hats off to them. Their zone really affected us. You know, they did a good job with their zone, and we weren't able to take advantage of it. We weren't able to knock down shots when we needed to loosen it up. And then how do you keep them out of the zone? Well, if you keep them off the foul line, they're going back to zone on makes. Well, when you're shooting free throws, it's a lot easier to get back to zone than when you have missed shots and you can't get your defense set. And that really, at the end of the day, was the story of the game, that they were able to get back to the zone. They were able to live on the foul line for the second half, you know, and not only did they go, but, you know, they made them. And when you go 25 times in the second half, 23 times in the second half, and then, of course, you make 19 of them, you know, that's a great percentage.
Once they started getting that lead, and they were making their free throws, in other words, you kind of dug a hole. It was going
Right.
to be pretty tough as long as they were making free throws to get out of that hole, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, you know, it comes down to can you get stops, you know, and not only can you get stops, but can you score? So you've got to score. And then, of course, you talk about being able to, turn up the pressure or whatever. Well, how are you able to turn up the pressure? You got to be able to score if you're going to press. We were able there to cut it to 4 there in the second half, late in the second half. We press. I think Eric hits a 3, then Giovanni gets a steal and a score, and we cut the lead to 4. And there's a timeout, so you're right there where you want to be. Credit to them. They come back. They don't fold, and I think they end up taking the lead right back up to 8 at that point. But, getting to it and getting in the press, and, I don't think we ever got in a rhythm, there in the second half. We were never able to do that, and that really affected us, whereas I think they were able to get in a rhythm simply from the standpoint of being able to get points at the foul line. When you play the game and you start talking about, you want to get technical, you start talking about points per possession. I mean, teams that play at one point per possession, you start playing at 1.12, 1.23, you're in the upper stratosphere. Well, if you're shooting free throws every possession, there's a doggone good chance you're going to play at more than 1 point per possession, because you're going to make them. So, you have 20 possessions and you go to the foul line 18 times. Well, I mean, geez, you've got 36 points. If you make them all, 36 points on 20 possessions is a crazy number. I mean, if they, that means they're shooting 13 to 20 if they only shot 2s. So they're 13 to 20 from the field, So you start getting to the foul line, and not only getting there but making them, it makes it hard. And then, of course, that's what they did. They stretched on us. I mean, if you just look at the, free throw difference in itself, I mean, there's an 11-point difference right there in points scored, just from the foul line. And, if it was 30 free throws they take, well, that makes it a lot better, because at the rate they were shooting them, they were going to make the 6 out of 6. So that certainly affected us.
I guess with what you've seen through the non-conference schedule, it's going to be pretty tough to have anything what you would call a particularly comfortable lead on anybody, right?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I would tell you, that was a 9-point lead. That game, 11, excuse me, we're up, and of course, they start going to the foul line. That changes it. That's always a concern, because when they get to the free throw line that early in a half, that is a problem. Now, we started off the half. We were headed towards getting to the foul line. I think we get 4 or 5 pretty quick ones on them, and now we've got an opportunity to get to the foul line, but then there was a while before we got there. And, the thing that hurts is when you look at that, there were a couple possessions to where we get like 2 fouls in the same possession. You can't call it the same possession. They get it, there's a foul. They get it back in or whatever, there's another foul. So now they get there quickly. And then, of course, we got them on box outs. We got them in transition, reaching or whatever you want to call it, blocks, you name it. And so now they're shooting free throws. And so, you look at that, I mean, that makes it a lot easier. I'm just telling you, I mean, I'm looking at, their guys and the points that they scored, and, they've got guys with half of their points came from free throw. Most of the guys, half their points came from the free throw line. And that's good for them. I mean, that's what we'd like. I mean, you get to the free throw line that much, we would like to be there and be the beneficiary of it. But, we weren't able to do that. And then they got in the groove, and then they were able to – the zone affected us. More importantly, the zone affected us, the rebounding. The zone, the rebounding, the fouling. Those were the 3 key factors of that game. And certainly if we played a game without fouling and we get them off the boards, it's a completely different game. But, I mean, that's if we didn't get the job done. It's the bottom line. And so now as we head into conference play, we've got to go to Bowling Green, a team that has played well, a team that, I don't know, they were picked preseason. I think they were picked down there, but they've come out and they figured it out. So now you got to figure out a way, how do you start off conference play and go on the road and get a win. We haven't been able to get one yet on the road. And at the end of the day, the reality is that as you look across our league and you look at the teams and the scores, from our conference, you're going to make your hay in the league. That's the way it is in pretty much all conferences, unless you're in one of the bigger conferences and a couple of particular other ones. But you know, we've got to start out well. We've got to come out. We've got to play with a sense of urgency as we go on the road and get some confidence built up for this group. And, you know, it's funny. You're a win away from happiness, a loss away from miserable. So, you know, you just never know.